How to make a coal-fired steam engine boiler plant, Part 5. Drilling the top cap for the boiler fittings. This is a difficult job. It shouldn't be, but I always find this a very tricky thing to do. The first part of the job is to take some measurements to find out exactly how far the centre of these bushes are from the outside edge of the boiler. The design of this top cap, which is going to hold the lagging in place, makes it even more difficult to plot accurately where the holes are going to be. I cut 4 pieces of mahogany cladding to use as packings later on. I could just take some measurements, mark out the top cap and drill the holes, but after the work I've done on the top cap I really don't want to mess it up. So what I did first was to sit the top cap on a piece of plywood and draw around the inside edge of the centre hole in the cap. And when I put the top cap back on the piece of plywood, accurately aligning it to the hole, I can see where the centre is. This model boiler was obviously made by a professional. It's really well made. I'm assuming that the centre fire tube is in the centre of the boiler, and in this clip I'm taking measurements from the centre fire tube to the centre of the bushes. I then transferred this measurement to a pair of compasses that I got with a cheap geometry set from a friend of mine. And with the top cap accurately positioned on the piece of plywood, I marked a pencil line in the position where I think the centre of the bushes should be. And in the clip at the moment I'm checking this with a ruler. And not unsurprisingly, the measurement that I get is exactly the same as the measurement from the centre fire tube to the centre of the bushes. The pencil makes a very faint mark on the brass, but it's clear enough for me to see where it is. But I'm not quite ready to drill any holes yet. What I need to do now is make a wooden template exactly the same diameter as the top part of the boiler. I could use the compasses for this, but there's no point. I just sit the boiler on a piece of plywood and cut the disc out on the bandsaw. I then cleaned up the edges on my linisher to make this a perfect fit for the top of the boiler. A while back I bought an ink pad, and I use it for making gaskets, and I press this ink pad firmly onto the top of the boiler. I'm doing this several times because I want a really good coating of ink on the boiler bushes. At this point, once again, I must say this is a professionally made boiler, and the bushes are exactly the same height as the top of the boiler barrel. So now, when I replace the plywood cap that I made, taking care to make sure that it is accurately positioned to correspond with the outside diameter of the boiler barrel, and once this is in position, I tap it very gently with a hammer, and I mean very gently. This allows me to get a firm impression of the position of the bushes, which are currently covered in ink. And now when I remove the wooden template, I have 3 marks on it which tell me where the centre of the bushes are. In this clip I'm just cleaning the ink off the boiler because I don't want to get it all over me and all over the bench. Next I drilled 3 holes in the template. These are 1/4 of an inch in diameter. And when I position the template back on the boiler and look into the holes, I can see that they are precisely over the centres of the bushes in the boiler. The finished holes in the top cap need to be a lot bigger than 1/4 of an inch. If any errors have crept in, it's an easy job to just use a round file to file the wooden template until the holes are in the correct position. In this clip I'm putting the packings in place because don't forget my top cap is bigger than the outside diameter of the boiler. It's going to cover the top of the boiler cladding. Over now to the drilling machine, and initially I fitted a 1/4 of an inch diameter drill bit into the chuck. I'm using this just to make a mark through the holes onto the brass, making sure that the centre template does not move out of position. And now I remove the template and replace the 1/4 inch twist drill with a centre drill, and I'm drilling holes exactly on the marks left by the twist drill. The good news is I can see that these holes all fall exactly on the pencil line that I made with the pair of cheap compasses. Or should that be compass? No, I think a compass is a thing that finds magnetic north. Anyway, back to the job. At this stage it's best to stay calm and breathe. The next job to do is to refit the 1/4 inch twist drill into the chuck and drill a 1/4 of an inch hole through the smaller holes made by the centre drill. After drilling the 1/4 of an inch diameter holes, try the top cap on the boiler and position it accurately over the boiler bushes and make sure that the holes are in the correct position, And if everything looks to be lining up perfectly, well done. Any errors can be corrected quite easily using a round file. The holes of course are going to need to be much bigger than the 1/4 inch diameter hole that's initially been drilled. I'm temporarily trying the fittings in place just to make sure that they do go through the holes. And thankfully they do. Everything seems to be lining up quite well. Of course, through the magic of video it looks very easy, but I didn't get it right the first time. One of the holes refused to line up with the boiler bushes, so I did have to file it with a round file. And that's the reason why I worked up the drill sizes. If you go for the finished size immediately and there's some misalignment, then you can still use the round file, but then the round hole suddenly becomes oval, and that looks terrible. Time to remove the fittings and drill the holes to 3/8 of an inch in diameter. And here they are, all nice and round. I'm using a deburring tool to get rid of any sharp edges. These deburring tools are really useful things to have in any workshop, but if you don't have one, you can of course use a large twist drill to deburr the hole, which works just as well. With the top cap fitted back onto the boiler, I can refit the taps, and you will notice that they go all the way through the holes right down onto the top of the boiler bush, but this looks terrible. So I'm going to make some 3/8 of an inch diameter male to female adapters that will come through the top cap and allow me to screw the fittings into the adapters rather than directly into the bushes. More about that in another episode. I'll also be showing how I make a fire hole door that fits into the existing hole in the boiler. But for the moment, as always, thanks for watching and I hope you found it useful.